Chapter 15. Madam Pong steps in.
"Activate external speakers and microphones,"
commanded Gracker. "Aye, aye, sir," said Phil. A pair of green tentacles writhed out from among his leaves and threw some switches. Leaning close to what I took to be a microphone, Gracker snapped,
"BKR, release those children immediately."
BKR waved his hands. The purple words in the air above him shimmered and disappeared. "The children are mine," he said, his words coming clearly through the speaker system. "Surrender now, or you will be very sorry." Would he really hurt them? I asked. At least, I thought I asked it, until I realised my throat was so tight with fear that no sound had come out. I swallowed and tried again. Would he really hurt them? "Of course," said Tar Gibbons. "Wait, I've got an idea. Why don't we shrink him?" Gracker shook his head.
"He will be shielded against that possibility."
"Okay, so we shrink the twins instead and get them away from him." "Possible, but unlikely," said Snout, hobbling across the room to stand beside me. "We got you away from him by shrinking you. BKI is not likely to let that happen twice. While success is not out of the question, odds are high that the attempt will result in injury to the younglings." "Then what are we going to do?" Gracker placed his hand over the microphone so that only we could hear him and said,
"We're going to surrender."
"We are?" I cried in astonishment.
"We have no choice. Any sign of attack on our part, and BKR will drop your siblings into that pit without a second thought. According to galactic code, such larvae must be protected."
"But can we count on him to keep his word? Will he really let the twins go if you surrender?"
"It is my duty to negotiate that certainty," said Gracker.
I was somewhat astonished that Gracker was so concerned about the twins' safety. Obviously they belonged to a different legal category than sixth graders like me, which brought up the next question. When we surrender, what will BKR do to us? "Millions have wept," murmured Madam Pong. Tar Gibbons rested his head on my shoulder and said, "Remember, young Albright, all is not lost until all is lost."
"Microphone off,"
said Gracker. "Aye, aye," burped Phil. Gracker turned and looked each of us full in the eyes. For the second or so that he was looking at me, I saw in his face a kind of sorrow I wouldn't have expected him to be able to feel. It was in that moment that I understood what it meant for him to surrender his ship. Finally he turned to Snout. The ship's mental officer rested one long-fingered hand on Gracker's broad shoulder and said, "My sympathies, my captain." Gracker nodded gruffly and turned to his control panel.
"Microphone on,"
he commanded. Then, speaking softly, he said,
"BKR, hear my words. We will surrender once the children are safely on the ground."
"How do I know I can trust you?" asked BKR. Gracker hesitated.
"Spacer's oath,"
he said at last. Madam Pong gasped. Tar Gibbons stretched its neck to lay its head on my shoulder again. "The captain is bound by that oath in a way that is hard to explain," it whispered. "By law and training, he cannot break it." "I understand," I replied, thinking of my mother's chocolate cookies. "Oath accepted," said BKR. "Here are the terms. I will let the children down and allow them to return home unharmed. In exchange, you will land your ship by that rock." He paused and pointed to a big stone about 20 feet in front of him. "All crew members will then exit and throw down their weapons." He took something from his pocket. "According to my readings, there are 6 beings on board. Make sure you all come out." Gracker's eyes widened, his nostrils flared, and he began to grind his teeth. "What's wrong?" I whispered to Tar Gibbons. Gracker answered the question himself. Placing his hand over the microphone, he said,
The instrument BKR used to determine the population of our ship checks animal life only. I'd bet a Fermian schnibble on it. He doesn't know Phil is here. If I hadn't taken a spacer's oath, we could bring Plinkat with us and leave Phil on the ship.
What good would that do? I asked. Basic warrior science tells us it is always good to have an element of which your enemy is unaware, explained Tar Gibbons. It may prove worthless. It may save your hide. Gracker lifted his hand from the microphone. Through clenched teeth, he said,
Release the children. When they're out of danger, we will exit.
I turned my attention to the view screen. BKR took something that looked like a TV remote control out of his pocket. He pushed a button, and the flame in the pit disappeared. Another button caused the twins to begin drifting slowly toward the ground. They landed about 5 feet from the side of the pit. Now run home, said BKR. You're a bad person, shouted Little Thing One. I hope you poop your pants. Then she grabbed Eric's hand and the two of them ran for the edge of the field. All right, Gracker, said BKR. The children are free. I will accept your surrender now. Before Gracker could move, Madame Pong stepped over to stand beside him. Slipping one hand over the microphone, she reached up to the back of his head and pulled out the module she had inserted the afternoon the ship crashed in my room. Snout made a move to stop her, then lowered his hand as if he thought better of it. Gracker stood as though frozen. Removing another module from her pocket, Madame Pong slipped it into Gracker's skull, saying, I hope this one functions more efficiently than the diplomatic module did. What is it? I asked. Docility module, she said, as a gentle smile spread over Gracker's face. He turned to her and said,
Well, the torch has passed. What are you going to do, madam?
I am assuming command of the ship, she replied. Her voice was like steel wrapped in velvet. Phil, order Plink to exit with Snout. You yourself will stay on board. Be ready for action. The rest of us will exit in a moment. Gracker, tell BKR we're on the way out. With a dreamy smile, Gracker removed his hand from the microphone and said,
We will be exiting the ship momentarily.
Now turn off the microphone, said Madame Pong. Gracker nodded and did as she told him. I don't understand, I said. Captain Gracker is bound by his oath, said Madame Pong. I, however, am a diplomat. While I am also bound by the oath he has made, the restrictions on my profession are not quite so strict. After all, I make my living telling little white lies. BKR wanted 6 of us to exit, and 6 is what he'll get.
He also said he wanted all of us to exit,
said Gracker. He was leaning against the control panel with a contented look on his face. I'd been thinking the same thing, but I hadn't dared to say it. He's getting half of what he asked for, said Madame Pong. That's a better deal than most of us get out of life. We left the ship in single file. BKR, who looked like a 10-story building for my current size, stared down at us. He looked extra hard at Plink, who was riding on Snout's shoulder, but didn't say anything. Gracker's guess had been right. Our enemy didn't realise we still had 1 crew member on board the Ferkel. All right, climb in here, said BKR, pointing to a plastic box at his feet. It took me a moment to recognise it. It was Little Thing One's lunchbox, something she had made Mum buy her after she saw me carrying my own lunchbox to school a couple of times a week. Now it looked like a small house. Well, a small yellow house with Smurfs all over it. Walking over to the box, I jumped up and grabbed the edge. With a boost from Gracker, I managed to climb in. Tumbling over the side, I landed in a pile of stale food and broken toys that Linda had been collecting. The other aliens soon joined me. I was still trying to untangle myself from the hair of a severed Barbie doll head when BKR slammed down the lid. Until that moment, I had never considered how dark it would be inside a lunchbox. We might as well have been in a coal bin at midnight, until 2 circles of light suddenly appeared. "What's that?" I cried. I was so startled that I stepped backwards. Naturally, I tripped over a piece of the debris littering the slick floor of the lunchbox. "Ow!" I said as I landed on something sharp. "Are you all right, Rod?" asked Madame Pong. "I'm fine. I just fell on something. But what's making those lights?" "It's me," said Tar Gibbons. The lights went out, then came back on, and I realised it was the result of the tar blinking. The light was coming from its eyes. Aliens. "What the heck is this thing, anyway?" I asked, picking up the object that had poked me in the side when I fell. I didn't really expect an answer. It's just one of those things you say. So I was startled when Tar Gibbons shouted, "Flibbix be honoured! It's a warrior miracle!"